worst over for residential real estate in India. All of a sudden, we're seeing a slew of numbers and data points that seem to suggest that buying homes is back in vogue. And while the second wave may have dampened sentiments, but June onwards, there is definitely a change of pace. So sample this. As per data put out by Knight Frank, in the month of July in the MMR region, that's the Mumbai metropolitan region, we saw registrations of residential property at 9,037. That's the highest since the year 2011. That means the highest in a decade. Then you have more data that shows that the number of new launches that developers have putting out is increasing. In Mumbai, it surged 33% quarter on quarter, 47% in Bengaluru. This is as per JLL. CBRE says the residential segment in the first half of this year in the top 7 cities has grown significantly. So what really are we seeing? Is this data which is being massaged to look like this is a great time to buy real estate? Well, if I broaden that spectrum, just look at what HDFC has announced in its quarterly numbers. Their individual loans that they gave to buyers has grown by about 180% in this quarter. So definitely the appetite is growing. To what extent and is it sustainable is then the question. To speak on this today, we're joined by Mr. Boman Rustom Irani. He's Chairman and Managing Director of the Rustomjee Group. Abhinav Joshi, Head of Research, India, Middle East and North Africa at CBRE is on the show with us today. We're also speaking with Mani Rangarajan, Group COO of Housing, Makan and PropTiger.com. Welcome to all of you and thank you so much for speaking with us on the India Development Debate, where we're trying to get a sense whether residential real estate is finally coming back in vogue. Mr. Irani, let me begin with you and contextualize this. Post-pandemic, in several large markets, especially in the United States and in others, even in China actually to that extent, we're seeing a hunger for new homes fueled by the experience that people had during the pandemic. While that was being talked about as one factor for over a year now, it hadn't really translated into large numbers as far as sales are concerned. Do you see that tide turning now?
Hi, Tamanna. Thank you very much for having me on the show. To start off with, Tamanna, let me just tell you that it's my understanding that people, after staying in their homes for a long time, have begun to value their homes more than they value their stocks, shares, bonds, and gold. Add to that, Tamanna, the average Indian or the wealth of the average Indian has grown more in the last year than it has in the last 10 years before that. So that puts a lot more disposable income in the hands of the average home buyer. Just to give you two numbers, Indians own about 25,000 tons of gold. And this gold has gone up by about 35%. Also, if you take a look at the BSE, which was at about 42,000 before the pandemic, has gone up to 54,000, post-pandemic. Both these, again, put a good amount of money into the hands of the home buyer itself. Now, as far as Mumbai is concerned, I remember you just mentioned 2 points about new launches. Our government of Maharashtra has taken a call to reduce the premiums that are payable for the homes that have to be built. And this leads to a very viable option for developers to invest their monies in right now to be able to announce new launches, because a lot of their homes in the ready inventory have already been sold during the pandemic. You must be aware of the Mumbai and MMR numbers. We've become the number one seller after a very long time. We used to be at number 4 or 5, but we've gone to number 1 just during this pandemic. So a lot of fence sitters, people who were hoping to buy a home, waiting for the right moment, or whatever other reason they had, took the advantage of the stamp duty reduction. We had a 3% reduction in stamp duty. And whatever the government gives is so real that people absolutely jump to it. So 3% reduction in stamp duty up to December from October, and then 2% reduction in stamp duty from Jan to March. And we also had the highest number of registrations in the month of July ever. And that was also because stamp duties were paid in the month of March and those flats got registered in July. I would say both of this, all these, impetus given by our state government has really helped home buying or home facilitation of home buyers for the future to improve. And we've been observing our members at Credai also who've taken advantage of this period and are launching and are having new launches, primarily because they've had excellent sales in the post-pandemic period.
Okay, so some interesting numbers there, Mr. Irani. Let me come back for a follow-up. You talked about gold holdings. You're right, Indians own a lot of gold generally, but it is passive income for the most part, looked at as, you know, an asset which is just lying around and not really doing much. So we'll have to figure out whether people are selling that gold and buying houses. And as far as the markets are concerned, we track them day in and out. The fact is just 4% of Indians are still even looking at equity as an option. So in that sense, if we talk hard numbers, are you seeing residential sales back to pre-pandemic levels, or are they still below that? And if yes, how much?
So gold sales is not what I'm talking about, but gold loans is what I'm talking about. It's become a lot more easier for people to take gold loans today. Those that are in the business of gold loans are actually going crazy in terms of the volume of business they're handling. And with regards to your question about whether the numbers are back to pre-pandemic, you would have seen since 2011, these have been numbers that have been worth reporting. The difference is, and what we should all understand is the branded or the well-recognized real estate developers' share in this entire pie is growing largely. So people are moving more towards trust, moving more towards those developers that have completed or have built a lot of inventory and have a good track record. And also home buyers, like I mentioned earlier, sitting in their homes for almost like 3 to 4 months, having nowhere to go, have become very discerning buyers and are investing money in a larger apartment. So if you had asked me in 2018-19, every developer worth his salt was, especially in the Mumbai region, because prices weren't going up, was looking at reducing the size of the apartments. That was the only way to bring down the, or to make it affordable for the home buyers. Today, in 21, the entire scene has changed, and Mumbai developers are giving actually something called a Zoom room, or business centers for people to work out of. All this change, I mean, if you're alive to change and the change happens quick enough, the buyer benefits, you benefit, and overall the economy also benefits.
Well, I think, every home will definitely need a Zoom room going forward. So that is an interesting aspect. Mani Rangarajan, is this a Mumbai Bengaluru story? Or is this a wider story as well when we're talking about real estate coming back into fashion? Because for the longest time, real estate and investing, your hard-earned money in real estate over time had become passé. Millennials thought that you might as well rent. It's not an asset that yields much return over time. Do you think that attitude has changed?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. And I would certainly agree with the sentiments brought forth by Mr. Irani. I think the real estate market is well on its road to recovery. And there are a couple of additional points that I'd like to mention. In the most recent consumer sentiment survey that we did at housing.com, we found that about 43% of people thought that real estate was the most secure asset class to invest in, ahead of other asset classes, including gold, stocks, mutual funds. Right? Second is the value of the home has really risen in the minds of the home buyer. And if you look at the current mix of home buyers, about 40% of people who are buying homes are actually trying to upgrade their homes and trying to move to a larger size home. So in fact, on the housing.com platform, we have seen the proportion of demand for single bedroom homes come down and the demand for 2 bedrooms, 3 and 3+ bedrooms go up. The third is that, I wouldn't say that there are too many investors out there in the market. There are some investors who are particularly looking at land, for example, to invest in. About 85 to 90% of people who are buying real estate are end users. And added to this is the fact that now with a lot of companies moving to working from home or a hybrid form of working from home and coming into the office, people no longer need to live or rent close to the CBDs in cities. So people can actually move to the peripheral areas of the city. So when you look at a region like MMR, you find areas such as Virar, Dombivli, Kalyan, Panvel. You see the demand there simply skyrocketing compared to demand in other parts of the city. And that's the case with the cities in Bangalore, such as Bangalore. For example, in Bangalore, you find North Bangalore, Devanahalli, Hebbal region, you see typically a growth there, right? Uh, Added to this, I think two-thirds of the people that we surveyed uh, seem to be more confident about the current state of the economy, and they are more certain about the incomes going forward. And with the onset of the current pandemic and India becoming more favorable as an investment destination, I would say that more jobs are going to move towards India, whether you talk about offshoring or nearshoring of jobs, a lot of jobs are going to move towards India. So typically in IT-driven cities, like, for example, Hyderabad, Pune, and Bangalore, you're seeing pretty strong demand. So in summary, this is not just a Mumbai or a Bangalore story, but we are seeing strong demand across tier one cities in the country. And we are seeing very, very strong demand for homes in tier two and tier three cities as well. So it seems to be like a nationwide resurgence of real estate.
Mani, what are the trends you're seeing in rentals? One thing we had seen after first wave and lockdown, and when people, as you mentioned, didn't need to live near CBDs, was rentals plummeting actually in large cities. Now that offices are beginning to open up and want people back in, vaccination rates have improved as well. Are you seeing that trend reverse for rentals?
No, we are still seeing that demand for rentals has come back since the onset of the second wave of the pandemic. But if I look at the buy segment, people either looking to buy new homes or to buy homes that are on resale, the growth rate for buy seems to be faster than the growth rate in the rental segment. And even in the rentals, people aspire to rent larger homes. So from, again, a single bedroom home, people are looking at 2 and 3 bedroom homes. So I would say that the rental segment is not growing as fast as the buy segment.
Abhinav Joshi, I asked a question in the beginning of this conversation, and let me repeat it to you. All of this is looking good. You know, real estate is recovering in relative terms because a lot of these numbers are year on year, and last year this time was very, very bad. We were still emerging or just emerged from a lockdown, etc. So in comparison, the first half of this year is likely to look pretty good, or even the first quarter compared to the first quarter of last year. But in real terms, in actual terms, where are we when we compare to pre-pandemic levels?
So, if we compare ourselves to pre-pandemic levels, we need to understand the larger context. The context is that we are seeing very aggressive monetary easing for the past almost a year. We're seeing stamp duty cuts, something that we have never seen before, the extent that we've never seen before. We've seen rebates on construction timelines, from various, data, bodies and organizations across the country. A lot of accommodation from the developer community, a lot of accommodations from the central and the state government. So as a result of which, what we're seeing is that buyers are really enthusiastic as far as participating in the housing market is concerned. And residential is, slightly different from the other segments of real estate like commercial. Residential had seen a volatile environment for the past couple of years. So post-COVID, despite the initial teething troubles that the sector faced, I would say, in the second quarter of 2020, we've seen a huge jump. And the jump in sales is, I would say, even stronger than 2019. In fact, in the first quarter of the year 2021, the sales were almost near to where we were around 7 to 8 years back in 2013, if you remember, when Delhi NCR as a market also was doing relatively quite well. So the numbers actually, apartment unit sales actually crossed 50,000 in the first quarter, which we've not seen in the last 7 years, despite all the the implementation of RERA, the transparency inflow because of policy reforms, etc., etc. So I think the larger context is basically encouraging home buyers to a large extent. And the kind of numbers that we are expecting in 2021 could be even better than the kind of pre-COVID levels we've seen. For example, the first half of 2021, sales have already touched around 80% of overall 2020 levels and around 50% of overall 2019 levels. So we're almost there, I would say.
What is happening with commercial though? I know we're focusing on residential today, but let me just quickly segue, Mr. Joshi, what is happening with commercial on the other hand? Because logic would dictate that if people want larger homes because they're going to be working from homes, somewhere or the other their company is going to be wanting to give up larger commercial spaces.
So commercial is a very exciting segment right now. There are different demand drivers that are at play. We need to understand that technology, which is the biggest demand driver for office space in India, is doing phenomenally well right now. In terms of the kind of hiring sentiments we see in Indian tech firms, global tech firms continue to expand in the country because this entire drive towards digitization is real, and there are corporates globally who are giving mandates to Indian IT majors. And as a result of which, we're seeing a lot of hiring happening across the country. The only bottleneck, obviously, is the uncertainty in the environment. And, if you have to talk about, the present situation, then the intensity and the timing of the third wave is something that we're unclear about. So as a result of which, corporates are slightly cautious about committing to long-term leases. Okay, but we're seeing a lot of demand in flex spaces. At the same time, most of the pre-commitments that were closed pre-COVID are still intact. It's just that those decisions are getting delayed as corporates really want to wait it out. Okay, but my personal view is that once we get clarity about which way the COVID recovery is moving, and once corporates have managed to vaccinate most of their employees, which is going to be somewhere around September to October, post that we feel return to work will really pick up. Your occupancy levels will pick up, and as a result of which, the demand for physical offices will also improve.
Yeah, so what will that do then to this real estate demand? Mr. Irani, let me come back to you because there seem to be two sides of the coin, right? A lot of the demand that we're seeing is, as you mentioned, because people were spending more time at home and then realized that, hey, we need a bigger home and maybe it's time to invest in a home with a Zoom room. If people are going to likely go back to work by September, October, perhaps even kids back in school from early next year, do you think that this momentum will fade?
No, I don't think so, Tamanna. Quite honestly, once you get used to a larger home, you're not going to try and go back to a smaller home. Secondly, the fact that people have made have surplus expendable incomes is going to help. Thirdly, the fact that people so far thought it was okay to continue living in very small cubby little homes, cubby hole size homes, and save all their money up for a rainy day. They've realized that the rainy day has already come and gone, and they really need to live their lives. With regards to the office space, let me also tell you one more reason for the office space demand to go up. One is that people will also start maintaining more distancing norms even in an office. An office like used to be crammed earlier may not be the norm of the future. Secondly, there is a lot of new category of work near home offices coming up. So not only work from home, but work near home. So developers who are doing larger complexes are building smaller office spaces for self-employed personnel, for professionals, etc., who can work from anywhere, but then don't want to work from home because they've got children studying in those Zoom rooms, or just the fact that they live with their parents and it's not as convenient. And just having an office room is an office room. You don't get the same experience that you would get and then you have to dress up to come for office. You're not sitting in shorts anymore. So the casualness of the workspace is not there.
No, so you've talked about two interesting innovations: a Zoom room, community work center of sorts within the complex. What else is being added on right now to take into account the new age that we're in post-pandemic?
So a lot of changes that have happened in the buying patterns. People have gone away from, or rather I'm talking Mumbai market, people are looking for amenities in a building for their children, for themselves. So things like a gym had become commonplace, but for children, there was hardly any kind of, playrooms. Nowadays, all good builders or developers are providing games areas within their buildings. Swimming pools have again started becoming common, and even though they cannot be built, because of the land constraint on the ground floor, they're being built on the terrace, and terraces are being taken to a whole new level of recreation. We see a lot of children's study areas that are being, created in the space itself. Other than that, like I mentioned to you, this work near home is a great new concept where offices that are in the sizes of about 400-500 square feet are being created close to where you live. And these are being bought by professionals or people with small businesses who can kind of operate from or have the best of both the worlds, be close to home so their lunchbox can come from there. They can take a lunch break and go home. At the same point of time, have an office environment where they work in peace and quiet. Lots of innovations, actually, but not all of them on this show.
Sounds fascinating. No, sounds fascinating. What's happening with prices then? Mani, let me come to you. Real estate, residential prices have been in a state of stagnation, I would say, for the last 10 years or so, between 2 and 7% I think, as per CBRE data itself. Do you see that changing upward or downward?
Well, when you look at the price trends over the last few years, right, prices have increased marginally across most cities, except for Hyderabad and Ahmedabad, where you've seen like price increase upwards of 5% almost every year. Hyderabad in particular, right, strong growth in commercial, seen a huge growth in residential, and a very, very strong growth in prices as well. Now, one of the things that we are seeing is that over the last year, developers have kind of reduced the discounts that they're providing to buyers across various price buckets, particularly in the 40 to 80 lakh kind of price bucket. Now, so far as prices are concerned, I think one of the things that developers are saddled with is increasing cost of construction. When you look at the price of sand, cement, steel, iron ore, these just seem to be increasing. We've had a supply chain disruption over the last year due to the pandemic, and developers' cost of construction has increased by 5 to 10% over the last year. So I think more than anything else, developers cannot afford to provide increased discounts. And I expect that if demand were to continue the season, you're likely to see some amount of price increase, around October and November, around the festival season. In fact, some developers across the country have already started increasing the prices, particularly in cities such as Mumbai and in Bengaluru.
Let me just get a quick word in from Mr. Irani on higher input costs and an expected increase in prices. Are you seeing both these trends?
Yes, steel prices are up, cement prices are up, compliance costs are up. What did offset it for quite some time right now was the reduced premiums. These reduced premiums period ends on the 31st of December. Price rises are a reality. We've kind of been absorbing the cost of increase over the last few years, but I don't think we're in a position to do that anymore. Prices will gradually go up, and that is why a discerning buyer is actually, or a well-read buyer is actually going ahead and making his bets today before the prices really rise a little more.
Thank you so much, Rustom, for Mr. Boman, for joining us today. Mr. Joshi, I just want to, before we wrap up, I just want to get, thank you so much, Boman, for joining us today. Mr. Joshi, before we wrap up, I just want to, Mr. Joshi, I just want to get a sense from you on where you think the prices are going to go. Do you echo this, that we're going to see an increase in prices?
Well, I think it's too early to talk about price rise. There's undoubtedly pressure on developers because of rise in input costs. But given the uncertainty that we're seeing in the market, I don't think so. There are many locations or many micro markets out there that can afford a price rise. So probably Hyderabad, certain locations might, Bangalore, certain locations might, because those are locations which are doing well as very strong commercial markets. There's a lot of IT demand, so a lot of end user demand there. You could see some marginal price rise in the outskirts of Mumbai or parts of Pune. But besides that, I think most of the other locations might remain flat.
Indeed. Are these new buyers going to come in and continue to come in as offices open up, as the contours of a post-pandemic economy keep changing? Well, the consensus so far seems to be that real estate definitely has taken a turn for the better. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you.